Hello my beautiful butterflies, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Beverly and it is lovely to see you today. In this video I'm going to be telling you a local ghost story, so grab a cup of tea, put your feet up and let's get to it. So this video is a collab video. It's a video I'm doing with my friend Amy. I will leave a link to her channel. She does like haul videos and paranormal content. She's lovely and I think you'd really enjoy her content, so definitely go and check her out in the description. Down in the description as well will be links to all the articles where I got information about this murder case. So if you're interested in knowing more about this case and in more detail, definitely go and check them out, as well as a link to a book that was bought out about it. So let's get to it. So on the 15th of June 1839, Christine Collins began her journey from Liverpool down to London. She was 37 years old and she was going to meet with her husband, who had gone ahead of her to try and find work down in London. She decided to travel by narrowboat because back then it was the cheapest way to travel. Narrowboat was just so cheap, so easy. They moved throughout the country and it was just a really easy way to travel and to get around. She was wearing a very plain dress, a fawn scarf around her neck, a blue patterned bonnet, and she was on her way to London to meet with her husband. So she was dressed up, she was looking to go and start a new life. She was probably really excited, and I can imagine it being something that you would be hesitant and scared about, travelling alone as a woman, but you would also be excited to go and see your husband. On the boat were also James Owen, who was 39 years old at the time. He was the captain of the Staffordshire Knot, the name of the narrowboat that he manned and owned. Also William Ellis, George Thomas, and a 12-year-old cabin boy called Isaac Musson. Butchering names since 1978. Owens had a really nasty reputation as being a bully, being very rough and a heavy drinker. So he didn't have a very good reputation, unfortunately. Obviously, this woman who was travelling on her own wouldn't have known that. She probably just thought, this is a cheap fare. I will get home to see my love and we'll start off this new life. I don't want to spend a lot of money on that. So she probably just thought she was doing her best. So Christine travelled, she caught the narrowboat in Liverpool, and she complained actually twice about travelling on this narrowboat on her way down to London. The first time was when they stopped in Stoke-on-Trent, which isn't too far from here. There she went to Pickford's office, that was the company that owned the narrowboat, and she complained to a porter and asked if she could take the stagecoach down to London instead of travelling by the narrowboat. Unfortunately, the London coach that day was full, and so she had to continue on the narrowboat. She had no choice. The second time was when she reached Stone, and here is like where my heart broke when I read about this, because apparently she said to the check-in clerk that they were being very rowdy and very boisterous, they were drinking a lot, and so she asked if she could travel a different way, but they said, sorry, there's nothing I can do for you, complain when you reach London. And so I often wonder if that man had read the papers of what happened to this woman and felt guilty about the fact that he hadn't helped her, because he could have really stepped in and changed everything. But unfortunately, she had no choice but to get back on that narrowboat and continue on her journey. That night, Isaac was ordered to go to bed early, and about 5 a.m. in the morning he was woken by 3 very drunk crewmates and told to take the horses further down the canal. At the same time, a lockkeeper and his wife were woken by the sounds of screaming and noise, but Owens insisted that it was just a drunken woman who they'd come into contact with. She'd had an argument with her husband and they went back to bed. So this is another time where somebody might have been able to step in for the woman, but unfortunately they just went back to bed and went back to sleep, and yeah, even though they saw a woman being carried into the cabin, they didn't think to ask any more questions or to check on the woman. They just went to bed. I mean, I can't imagine doing that. If I'd heard screaming, I'd want to speak to that woman and make sure she was okay. But they didn't. So Isaac was then told that Christine had gone missing, and they made like a half-hearted attempt to look around for her, but when they couldn't find her, they all got back into the boat and continued on their journey towards London. At Who Mill Lock, Isaac told the lockkeeper about what he had heard and seen at the previous stop, and once they were out of sight, the lockkeeper called the police. Now, Isaac had deserted the canal boat at this time, and I think at that point the men realised the jig was up. That the boy had told on them and run away, and so they ditched the boat and went on the run. Police did a search of the narrow boat and they found her bonnet and shoes, and so they knew something horrible had happened to this poor woman. Christine's body was found later on a few yards up the canal, and she'd been wrapped in chains from the canal boat to weigh her body down, but they obviously hadn't done a very good job because the police found her almost immediately. And this is where the bloody steps come into it, because locals picked her up and carried her up the steps at Brindley Bank, the now famous Bloody Steps, and took her into the Talbot Inn, where she was given a post-mortem and the police looked into what had happened to her. It was found that she had been raped by 3 men very brutally and viciously, according to newspaper reports, which just sounds just a nightmare. And she had been murdered. And so they were on the run, the 3 men. They were looking for them, and they were on the run for a few months before they were finally found. Owens, Thomas and Ellis were found guilty of murder and rape. Owens and Thomas were both hanged, whereas Ellis was transported to Australia. I couldn't find out why all 3 men weren't hanged or why all 3 men were not sent to Australia. I don't know what the difference was between them, so I wish I could find that out. But basically, for some reason, the 3 didn't get the same sentencing. Nearly 10,000 people showed up in Stafford when the 2 men were hanged. They actually brought out like a portable gallows to hang them, so everyone could watch it happen, which is just horrific. But that's what people used to do. They used to watch the hanging, and apparently it took them quite a while, like a few minutes, to die, and they thrashed around a lot, which just sounds horrific. I'm so glad we no longer hang people, because it just sounds horrible way to die. But they were put to death. Christine's body is buried in St Augustine's churchyard in Rugeley, where I live, and it's said that the steps where she was carried up run with blood from time to time, as if crying for this woman who'd been murdered so brutally. And that's what I always heard when I was a child. I thought this was like an urban legend or just a local story to scare you, because people always talked about these bloody steps running with blood. Let's go at night time and see if we can see them. Nobody ever went. But it used to be like a dare kind of thing, and that's why I always thought this was just a story until I started looking into it and found out all this true crime story. It's awful to think about this poor Christine and what had happened to her. I can't imagine how her husband would have felt. Probably extremely guilty that he hadn't travelled up and then come back down with her. But yeah, unfortunately she died. Now, I did find out a really cool ghost story on a local ghost hunting website. In 1939, 2 women were out walking close to where the Bloody Steps are, and they heard screams in the thicket. And they went to investigate, and out came a man with his long hair tied back, looking dishevelled in old-fashioned clothes. He stumbled out and walked across a lawn, through a fence, stopped and looked at them, and they commented about how sad his eyes looked. He then turned on his heel and disappeared into a fallen tree. Now, I love a good ghost tale. I was just like, what? Was it daytime? Was it nighttime? Like, I couldn't find out the particulars, but That really freaked me out. That freaked me out more than the bloody steps, because I always thought, you know, the steps running with blood, it's a bit spooky, but this guy who was probably one of the murderers, looking at them and feeling remorse, I suppose, for what he had done, that would chill me to the bone. But yeah, this story is really harrowing, about a woman trying to just get to the man that she loved, and the horrible things that had happened to her because she decided to take a cheap fare. This is a local ghost story. I really hope that you enjoyed this true crime tale. If you did, don't forget to head down there and leave it a cheeky little like so that I know that you enjoyed it. I really hope that you did. I would love to bring more content like this to my channel, so if you enjoyed it, let me know down below. And if you want to hear more ghostly stories from around where I live, because this is quite a hot spot for the ghostly goings on, definitely let me know down in the comments. I always love hearing from you guys. I would love to maybe visit some of the places that feature in this story, like where she was found and the bloody steps themselves, as well as where she's buried. So if you would like me to do a video like that, let me know down below in the comments. All the things. I love hearing from you. And also make sure you go and check out the description, check out Amy's channel. I'll have a link to her video down below, because this is a collaboration and she's telling you her local ghost story from where she lives. So I really hope that you enjoy that, and don't forget to hit the subscribe when you're over there. And if you're not subscribed here, why not hit that little subscribe button? I would love to have more people here, more people to chat to and get to know. I really enjoy making videos for you. I mainly talk about vintage fashion and spirituality and disability awareness. So if you're interested in any of those topics, if you like my face, don't forget to head down there, hit that subscribe button, ring that little bell, get your butterfly wings, and become a member of the family. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I really hope that you will stick around, put your feet up, grab a cup of tea, and check out this playlist that I put together for you. I really hope that you enjoy it. I hope that you will stick around and join the family. I hope that you're doing well, staying safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Mwah.